Hello, it's Tanya and Amelia from Coffee Catchup's podcast, and this is Coffee Catchups Espresso on Cross Rhythms Radio. And Amelia, I have a question.
Oh, hello.
I have a question.
Hit me with it.
Okay. So we're obviously going into autumn and winter.
Yes.
Are you a fan of autumn?
I like autumn, not so much winter.
Okay.
I'm a cosy season gal, so I do very much enjoy the falling leaves, the pumpkin spice lattes, because I'm a basic white girl, but also no disrespect because they are great. And yeah, all of the cozy autumnal things I do quite enjoy.
That's interesting because I don't. Like,
Do you not?
I will concede that I like a winter coat. Mm-hmm. Like winter fashion, autumn and winter fashion, I love. I sound like I'm a massive fashion-y. I'm not. But if I was to be a fashion person, it will definitely autumn and winter are the ones for me. Yeah, but in general, I don't like autumn because, well, one, it rains a lot more.
It does. This is true.
It's like, it reminds me that winter's coming and that summer is over because I'm a summer girl. I love summer.
Yeah,
I love
too.
spring. Spring is my favourite, but I love like late evenings, the weather, just being outside more.
Yeah.
And so autumn always reminds me of what's coming.
Yes,
And then eventually when we
very
get to
true.
January and February, which are my least favourite months of the year. And anyway, the reason I ask is because the topic that we're just going to be having a chat about is winter blues, really. And
Yes.
what I've often referred to it as a bit of seasonal depression, but it's actually not called that.
Is it not?
It's not.
What's the official name?
It is called seasonal affective disorder,
Interesting. Okay.
which makes it sound very sciencey.
It does. It does sound very sciencey.
But the acronym of that is SAD.
sad.
Big sad.
Big sad.
My catchphrase,
That is a
guys,
bit of a Tanya catchphrase.
is big sads. And we're going to say no more about it, but just keep your ears out for every time I use it and feel free to.
Well, it's not
tell
all.
me
It's
off.
not all bad. It's either big sads or big loves. Big happies.
And big happies. Yeah. Yeah. So big sads is like a lighter version of sadness. We've gone
Yeah.
on a tangent, and let's get back to what we're talking about,
let's
which
not
is
continue that.
seasonal affective disorder. Now, I think most people, I'd say especially in England and probably especially in the raininess of Devon and Plymouth,
Yes.
would experience some level, whether lesser or greater, of seasonal affective disorder, winter blues.
Indeed.
Do you know why and what causes it?
I don't. I feel like my guess would be kind of something to do with the light. Maybe kind of we're not getting as much vitamin D because the days are shorter, the nights are longer. By the time it gets to sort of November, you're leaving work in the dark.
Yeah,
quite a lot of the time. Does it to do with that?
Yeah, absolutely. You're spot on. It's the basically in the winter we often feel more sad. We have lower mood.
Sure.
And some people it goes really far and they get really sort of to the level of depression. Yeah. And that's when we'd often use the term, the SAD term, seasonal affective disorder. But you're absolutely right. A lot of it scientists would attribute to light.
Sure.
Darker days. Also, sleep pattern is harder to maintain. You get less vitamin D from the sun. You get less socialising time. And you often do less physical exercise.
Sure.
And I think we can all relate to that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. As Tanya said, I'm also very much January, February, do not enjoy those months at all. Like, I think anything past Christmas usually, like once the sort of Christmas and New Year hype is over, I'm like, okay, this just sucks now. Like, give me April and May. Like, I want summer to arrive.
But even I notice, even as soon as the clocks change, it's so much harder to get up.
Oh yeah,
like
absolutely.
I can get up so much easier in the summer. Like I was working on a project where I would have to get up at 5.
Wow,
and it was fine in the summer. Ask me to get up at 7 in the winter.
Thank you.
It feels physically harder. It feels really hard because you're not getting that natural sunlight which wakes you up, and you're just having to force yourself out of bed.
Yeah, so true.
So there is definitely something in and around it, and I think sometimes acknowledging it can be really helpful. And we're going to talk more about that after the song. So yeah, I don't know about you, Amelia, but I find that in the winter I don't like going out of my house as much. I'm much more of a home person. Definitely, if it's raining, I'm much less likely to go outside.
Yeah.
Much less likely to go and see my friends. Much less likely. Church is very important to me. I'm less likely to go to church.
Yeah.
And so there's a real problem with the social element as well. And then there is this thing around light. And because a lot of people work during the hours that it's light in the winter, we actually don't get out into the sunlight.
No, so true.
Don't realise what a negative effect that has on us. And so what you can often experience during the winter months, I mean, it's worth checking with yourself. Am I in a low mood? Like, am I losing pleasure or interest in the things that I normally enjoy? Am I more irritable? Do I find it really hard to get out of bed? Am I perhaps losing some of my healthy habits? And sometimes just being aware of, okay, we're going into winter. I'm going to start to struggle with a lot of these things.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, this is Coffee Catch-Ups. We want to talk about how to help that. So it's going to happen every winter. How do we help ourselves, given that there are many circumstances out of our control, given that we cannot change the sunlight situation, given the fact that we do have to work in order to earn money so that we can live and breathe? Like, how do we actually make sure that this doesn't affect us? Because it feels, if you look at it, it feels to me like, oh, well, I'm just going to be depressed every winter and there's nothing I can do about it. Is there something we can do about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, firstly, like you were saying about having that awareness, because I think that in itself does kind of help, doesn't it? Actually knowing, okay, it is coming to winter. I am potentially going to get a little bit depressed, and knowing yourself and knowing how you kind of function. So like if getting out of bed is potentially an issue, just trying to get into that routine, I think, of going, no, it's 7 a.m, 6 a.m, whenever you wake up. Actually, I am going to get out of bed and I'm going to do something that makes me happy. Get out of bed, have that morning coffee, and then, if you've got time, maybe read a chapter of your book.
Or listen to a great podcast.
Listen to a great podcast. Have you got any suggestions on what that might be?
Coffee Catchups podcast.
Interesting.
Find on everywhere where you get your podcast stream.
What an absolutely audacious plug, but I love it.
We were talking about a serious subject and I made it completely about myself and you and our podcast. Oh dear.
Never happened before.
Never happens. But yeah, no, you were making a serious point.
No, I was, but what was I saying? Oh yeah, routine. Just get into that routine of doing something that makes you happy in the morning, and actually, even just doing a couple stretches or a bit of exercise. Exercise releases dopamine, right? Dopamine, endorphins. That's
endorphins.
It wasn't dopamine. It was endorphins. Not going to spew out incorrect things on the radio. So exercise releases endorphins, and just getting that done as soon as you get up. Or if you are struggling with the lack of light, if you have a lunch break where you can maybe get outside for 15 minutes. I'm very lucky to work at a National Trust property where I can go and walk around the rose garden on my lunch break, and I realise that's a very privileged position to be in, but if you're able to, just take a walk around the block. Just leave the office on your lunch break, take a walk around the block, even if it's 5 minutes that you can spare, and just get some sunlight, get some fresh air. I think is going to be really, really helpful.
I love that. And I think these healthy habits are really important in all the time. Like it is, we're not saying, only do this at the winter, but bear in mind that your motivation may drop when it comes to autumn and when it comes to winter. So carving it out and being more intentional and really sort of motivating yourself. And maybe if motivation is something you struggle with, buddying up with a mate and going, have you got out this week? Have you had your daily dose of sunlight? And making it more intentional, carved out into your routine might be helpful. We're going to talk more about this in a moment, but right after this song. Right, okay, so when it comes to seasonal affective disorder, I've had some thoughts of things that I'm going to try and do this year, because I do struggle with this, of trying to make winter and autumn a bit more cheerful and feel less hopeless in the winter. And And I loved what you were saying about carving out healthy habits, intentionally going out and getting some sunlight, because sunlight is important. You can get lamps and stuff, sunlight lamps, which
so true.
Although it's not as good as the sun, let's be honest, but we do live in Plymouth.
We do.
So sunlight can sometimes be limited, and therefore, if you feel like actually you're lacking in that, then getting a lamp can be helpful. I've also used vitamin D spray, because that's what's in sunlight.
That's a really good shout.
And my good friend Ali Mansfield, who was on Across Rhythms for a while, she recommended this to me. It's a spray, a vitamin D spray. You can get it from the pharmacy, and you just spray it on your tongue. And I actually noticed a difference in my mood, because quite often we're just not getting the vitamins that we need.
So true.
And vitamin D is the one from sunlight. So I thought, that's a really good practical tip in doing it. What about you? Do you have any practical tips?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you were saying before about being intentional and maybe like, being accountable with a mate, take that one step further and say, we were saying about the social element kind of decreasing a little bit in winter. Yeah. Contact your friends and say, hey, let's do something. There's always stuff you can do that doesn't need to be done in summer. If you're really missing summer, why not have a barbecue? Just have a barbecue indoors. Like, do it. Or have someone, if it's dry outside, take it outside and, just wrap up warm and, stand around and have your burgers or whatever you want to do. Like, there's absolutely no reason that should be limited to
I think
summer.
I'm going to turn that down, the barbecue outside, but I will I'm going to make myself go surfing in the winter, because that's really fun. Or cold, but good fun. Or go intentional for a nice beach walk.
Yes.
Beaches.
Winter beach walks. Great.
They're great.
So good, man.
I went down to St Ives a couple of years ago, or right just after Christmas. And there's something really beautiful about being one of the few people on the beach.
Absolutely. And that sort of takes me on to my next point, actually, which was embrace the good things about the season. Like, again, we're all about positivity, aren't we, on Coffee Catch-Ups, and gratitude as well. And actually just kind of going, okay, I don't like winter, but what are the nice things about winter? Having the beach to yourself if you want to go for a walk. There are some really, really beautiful walks around us, aren't there? There are so many places that you can still go for a nice walk during the winter. Again, think about the good things. Like, one of the things I love about autumn is you can go to the pumpkin patch. That's really fun.
You do love that.
You can go apple picking, or you can, just find some cozy recipes to make with friends. Go out for hot chocolates or pumpkin spice lattes if you're that kind of person. And just try and embrace the good things about the season. And it's not always easy, because summer is very easy. You can see the good things. You can, go outside without a coat and all of that. And it's a lovely, lovely time. But there are good things about every season, I think. And
I think on a slightly more serious note, because I love what you're saying, embrace the good things. If also, though, acknowledge that in the winter you spend more time at home, and sometimes for some people, home isn't always a safe place.
Absolutely.
Isn't always a place they feel they can really relax. So, and also, sometimes we get stuck, and we, as much as we want to, we can't kick ourselves out of this, what can be a cycle of feeling sad, but it's raining still, and I want to go outside, but I just can't seem to do it. For any kind of, I want to be sensitive around this, to be honest, but there are talking therapies available.
Absolutely.
That are really fantastic, and I vouch, I go, and there is no shame attached, and they can offer professional help for if you are struggling with winter. Winter can bring up a lot of stuff, not just on the sunlight aspect, on the exercise aspect or whatever, but also sometimes winter's really hard personally.
Yes.
Christmas, New Year, things like that can bring up some really difficult things for people. And the fuel system at the moment, the fact that fuel prices are really difficult, can bring up a lot of worry. So often having a professional to speak to about your worries and concerns can really be a helpful position, and can be life-giving, and it can help you to get out of a cycle which you thought you couldn't get out of.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. That's so true.
Which brings us to the end of talking about SAD, sad. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you again next week.
Bye-bye.